What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined always by my man in the corner, producer Nick Belsky. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talk or subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, we are 24 hours away from the arrival of 2024 training camp at St. Vincent College in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. I don't know about you, but I got chills saying that. We are here. Football is officially back. It is wild times. Goosebumps are heavy, and I'm ready to watch some football. It's a beautiful day. Even if it wasn't a beautiful day, it's a beautiful day because we are this close to football. How you feeling, my friend?
I'm feeling great. You're going to get to see athletes in person tomorrow arriving at Latrobe. I'm going to pretend to be an athlete tonight as I start my rec volleyball, beach volleyball league. Unfortunately, though, I'm going to have to take a nap because I'm old and that starts at 9:15. But I will pretend to be an athlete tonight. Yes.
Dude, that's a wild time to be doing physical activity. The
beach
wild
volleyball
time.
too, because I'm like, I definitely have to shower after that because you're gonna be sweaty and sandy, and there's no way I'm not showering after that. So
Dude,
it's gonna be like I said, I'm gonna need to take a nap today at some point.
That's a wild time. They're good. Best of luck. I hope you kill it. Hope you guys win. Is Kayla in there as well?
She is not. She said I'll cheer from the side, but also she's not gonna be there at 9:15.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'd be cheering in bed. I'd be, hey, how's it going? Good, fantastic, glad to hear it. That's crazy. Best of luck to you, but there's no chance. There's like literally 0% chance that I'd be playing beach volleyball at 9:15 at night on a Tuesday. The Pittsburgh Steelers do arrive tomorrow. We will see actual athletes, and it will be before the sun goes down when we see these actual athletes. It'll be crazy times. We're going to dive into a little bit of a training camp preview with some position battles and how we expect those position battles to turn out by the end of training camp. Meanwhile, PFF had one wild, absolutely wild defense of why they just cannot give TJ Watt the credit he deserves. And we'll dive into some news and notes because, well, guess what? Football is officially back, and there's actually things to talk about. I'll toss it over to you. What do we got to start off the show today?
Yeah, let's start with Omar Khan doing a little bit of pre-training camp cooking, bringing in a couple of players for tryouts earlier this week. The Steelers worked out running back / fullback Torrey Carter and defensive end Marquise Spencer, according to The Wire. What are your thoughts on these couple of tryouts that the Pittsburgh Steelers decided that they wanted to do right before showing up to Latrobe?
Yeah, so I love the fullback. I love bringing in a fullback. I don't think either of these guys really get signed, or at least not right now, but maybe this is if Jack Coletto doesn't work out, we bring in somebody else. If Connor Hayward isn't the guy at fullback, maybe we bring in somebody else. I'll say this is the beginning. That's why I wanted to talk about this. That's why I added it to the schedule, is that this is the start of the Pittsburgh Steelers' constant rotation of testing players on the open market with tryouts and seeing who they could bring in, who they can replace, and how they could get the best 90 people on the football field for the next month. That's massive. That's how you know football is back, is that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to start bringing in every random name humanly possible for a tryout or workout or whatever, just to keep them on the back burner and say, hey, at some point we might need you because football is finally here. Torrey Carter has some experience. If you look at him, he looks like Cole Holcomb as a fullback. That's pretty much exactly what he looks like. He's a special teamer. He is a fullback, a little bit of a running back. He's got some experience, and coming from LSU, that always helps. Spencer is a dude who hasn't played much. He's a 7th-round pick out of Mississippi State. Not a massive name. I don't expect him to be a name to watch. Carter could be a name to watch that they add and kind of give an opportunity to. But again, Jack Coletto is a dude right now, and he's a dude to watch. So we'll see what happens. But this is the beginning of the cycle of the NFL is back, and we will test out all of these players, and that's as exciting as it gets.
Well, you led off the show talking about training camp and players reporting tomorrow, which brings a very important question to mind for me. Who do you think is going to be the most memorable tomorrow when they show up to Latrobe? Because in the history, we've had a lot of memorable, walk-ins for Steelers training camp at Latrobe. Who do you think takes the cake tomorrow in Latrobe?
That is such a good question. So this is where I get a little bit sad, a little bit reminiscent in a bad way, is that I missed the AB coming in a helicopter, the James Harrison showing up in a 18-wheeler, I believe it was, maybe a fire truck. I don't remember what it was. monster truck, maybe the Eli Rogers and the hard hat days. I just missed all that, which stinks. But I was here for some other good ones. And last year, while there wasn't many massive memorable ones, there was Christian Kuntz and Presley Harvin carrying a massage chair in, and Cam Hayward showing up with, I don't know, just buckets and buckets of things to make his room as comfortable as it gets for a 7-foot human being sleeping on a twin mattress. This year, if I had to take a guess at who the most memorable entrance is, I mean, Russell Wilson's got to be up there. Justin Fields has got to be up there. I expect Joey Porter Jr. to say, I'm no longer a rookie. I'm allowed to do whatever I want, and I'm about to show up and ball out and do something crazy. Patrick Queen might be in that same boat. It's the rookies are the second-year guys that I think are going to be memorable. I think Nick Herbig's going to show up with a little flash. I think Joey's going to show up with a little flash, and I expect the quarterbacks to come in here and just, do a little bit of something. DeMarvin Leal, too. He strikes me as a guy that would have a good arrival.
You mentioned a couple of the people that you missed. Were you there for the Vince Williams Austin 316 one?
No, that's what I'm saying. I missed all the good ones. They all left after that. And then now it's like, that's what they need. The Steelers need to bring back good arrivals because that gives a little bit of a fire. You miss it now. They're just trying to sneak in there and avoid everybody. They don't want the media attention, blah, blah, blah. No, make it fun. Show up in a dump truck. I don't care. Let's do this. Fly in, maybe not 4 hours later like Antonio Brown did, but if you want to come down in a helicopter, come down in a helicopter in a reasonable hour and let's have a good time.
Yeah, no, I was thinking Broderick Jones potentially, but also I feel like he's somebody that would think it'd be hilarious to do it and then decides not to do it.
Broderick showed up last year in an Uber that he took right from the airport. He was like, dude, I got off the plane and said, I guess I should just go to training camp, and Ubered down. The guy had no idea who he was. No clue. He said the whole trip, the guy was like, oh, you play for the Steelers. That's very cool. And he's like, yeah, it was their first round draft pick, but cool. Thanks. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like that one. So I think Broderick this year, he should just double down. He should get an Uber XL this year.
That would be huge. Yeah, it was just like a little Honda Civic. And I was like, how'd you fit in that, pal? I have no idea, but it was a good time. I expect if I'm gonna take a guess, Joey Porter Jr. is gonna ball out this year. And if he doesn't, I'm gonna tell him how disappointed I am.
Hey, listen, the expectations are high when you're Peasy's kid. You got to be able to bring it to Latrobe.
Got to be able to bring it. I agree. All right. Let's talk about some wild Pittsburgh Steelers takes as we dive into some TJ Watt and then some training camp battles to close out the show here. Crazy times on the PFF likes to defend how much they dislike TJ Watt front here. PFF's Sam Monson, who just, constantly makes bad decisions when it comes to TJ Watt. He authored the best players list, which we went over the other day. TJ Watt was 6th on the defensive lineman list, which I don't think anybody in the top 5 was correct, but let alone TJ being number 6. This is what he had to say when he tried to defend why players are where and why Myles Garrett is constantly above TJ Watt in pretty much every single ranking that PFF has ever put out, and Steelers fans continue to tell them that's just wrong. Quote, it's going to be interesting when the NFL releases their top 100. They tweeted out a bunch of ballots of players having voted. I didn't see a single one that had TJ Watt above Myles Garrett, and that's one thing. That's one of the things about last season that Steelers fans that are upset that we have this vendetta against TJ Watt have not found an answer to just yet. Look it. We could talk miles and miles and for days and days about the PFF vendetta against TJ Watt and how real it is. But it's been there for a long time. And it goes down to basic fundamental watching football games sometimes. Whereas in PFF will toss out. Look, I've personally been told that PFF has gotten so big that they don't even know what their grading system is. That most of the time, somebody somewhere just made it up, which is crazy to me. That being said, sometimes you look at halftime and there are PFF grades of the first half of a game. How did somebody put out halftime grades of every single player without deep diving into that first half? And they didn't do that in the 30 seconds that they went from the end of the first half clicking post on that Twitter post. It just doesn't make sense. PFF has a constant vendetta against TJ Watt. This one's wild to me because, quite frankly, yes, I get it. Myles Garrett is Myles Garrett, and he's terrifying, and everybody says how terrifying it is, but I don't think many NFL players are sitting around, outside of Micah Parsons maybe, saying that Myles Garrett is head and shoulders the best defensive lineman in football. Maybe he's above TJ Watt in a couple of things, but the best defensive lineman in football, I don't think anybody's sitting around saying that. And there are other candidates. I think people put Max Crosby up there. I think people put Micah Parsons up there. I think people put Christian Wilkins. And I mean, if you want to get crazy, maybe a name like Nick Bosa or, Aiden Hutchinson, but TJ Watt's in that mix as well. I don't think it's just Myles Garrett. I think it's the fact that PFF has stuck themselves to Myles Garrett. This is the guy, so much so that it's becoming blatantly obvious how much they just refuse to get off that kick. And I don't know where they come from. I don't know what the PFF grade system are, but if you ask any NFL football player, any single one of them, I have never, ever, ever talked to a football player who has said the PFF grades are accurate. They all hate them. They all think that they're nonsense, and they all think that they are as untruthful as it gets. So yes, it's a vendetta against TJ Watt. Let's just be honest about it. You heard this, and then he finished it off with this. There may not be a better playmaker on the defensive side of the football than TJ Watt. What? How did we get there from, well, Myles Garrett's better? Your thoughts when you heard the PFF explanation of why TJ Watt is below Myles Garrett and how somehow the entire NFL agrees with PFF when if you ask a player, none of them actually do.
Yeah, my thoughts were, well, PFF has, as you mentioned, stuck themselves to Myles Garrett, and this is now the most interaction that they get online is Steelers fans mad about what PFF says about TJ Watt. So to me, that's what this is. This is continuing to fan the flames of, hey, we don't hate TJ Watt. We just believe he is nowhere near what Myles Garrett is, which is completely fabricated, completely false. And I don't even think they believe it. But at this time, when you look at it, you just have to understand that they're not going to grade this fairly. They like Myles Garrett. He is their guy, whatever. But everybody that watches football, like you mentioned, everybody that actually watches both of these two guys play know that they're both incredible athletes and neither of them are really head and shoulders above the other. It's just a matter of who you think is a little bit better than the other. In my opinion, it's TJ Watt. I'm sure you share that same opinion, but it's not head and shoulders either way.
No, I agree. It's not head and shoulders, but that's the thing is they make it head and shoulders, and that's the issue. This is a great one. KDTV isn't PFF located in Ohio. They are, and they're also owned by Chris Collinson. So there you go. Like you get Collinsworth. Who cares? It's still the worst announcer in football. That's what I'm saying. It's as bad as it gets. The disrespect is crazy, and the disrespect is topped off because TJ Watt has to deal twofold here. He's the brother of JJ Watt, which means people are already bored of the Watt name. They had one. It was awesome. It was JJ. TJ can't be as good as JJ, even if he is. And second, Myles Garrett is supposed to be the greatest defensive player of all time. And there will be arguments from PFF when he retires that he is the greatest defensive player of all time, even if it's not true. So TJ is always going to be that second fiddle when it comes to certain people and certain outlets, and PFF is one of them. This explanation was wild, man. Wild. And sometimes that's just where the cookie crumbles. It's where the cookie crumbles. All right. We'll get off of TJ Watt and complaining about why PFF is wrong pretty much all the time. We'll talk some training camp because we are 24 hours away from the arrival of training camp. The first practice is Thursday, and Victor let us know that yesterday I was wrong and that the Friday Night Lights is $10. I apologize. I thought it was free. $10 ain't bad. I still think it should be free. I'll let Art Rooney know that. I don't think he's going to care, but I'll make sure that I toss that 2 cents out there for him. Let's talk some training camp battles. We have a long list of them. Outside linebacker 4, running back 4, running back 3, wide receiver 2. Which of the 5 wide receivers make the team? Cornerback 3, slot corner, offensive tackle, and of course the big kahuna, quarterback, which we've mentioned a number of times. Our thoughts on the quarterback position. We'll dive into it one more time. Let's start with outside linebacker 4 here. We got 2 big ones. Jeremiah Moon, David Perales are probably the leading candidates for the job as of right now. Jacob Windham is another candidate here. New guy. I think an undrafted rookie out of Mississippi State, maybe. I don't remember. Jim Wexel's constantly talking to me about this guy, and to be honest with you,
Michigan State.
Michigan State, that's what it is. And I don't see him in the running, but we'll toss his name out there. Outside linebacker 4, for me, Jeremiah Moon comes in here as the favorite because he has NFL experience. He's played in the AFC North. He's a long, lengthy defender who could play special teams, could come off the edge, is super athletic. The Steelers are going to like that he played in the AFC North, that he played with the Ravens, and that he already has that experience working on special teams and on the edge with some pretty big names over in Baltimore. That being said, David Peralez is the guy that I'm going with. And I'm going with David Peralez because last year, TJ Watt raved about how impressive this guy was and how he just constantly wants to learn from Alex Highsmith and Marcus Golden and TJ Watt. And this year, it'll be Nick Herbig and Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt. And that's just what you're looking for in a guy. If he stuck around all year on the practice squad to the point where they brought him back, you have to feel like there's some connection here. He lost like 15 pounds during the offseason so that he could be faster off the edge. He's coming out here to work with TJ and Alex and everybody again. I just think that he's got the upper hand after a year. I think he could be a sleeper to make this team. It's going to come down to special teams, but I trust that him and Danny Smith have some sort of connection because David made it known to me last year that special teams is the way he's going to make this team and that he's working heavily on special teams. I'm going David Peralez as my pick over Jeremiah Moon, which is, I think, a bit of a surprise to a lot of people. Your thoughts on the outside linebacker 4?
Yeah, this might actually be the closest competition that we talk about today because both of these guys, like you mentioned, have a pedigree and have reasons to be the leader in the clubhouse when it comes to entering training camp. I would go with Jeremiah Moon in this one. I think the experience is key in this, and I think when you look at what the Steelers want right now, David Peralez is a guy who, he was here last year. Yeah, he learned under TJ Watt. He learned under a guy like Alex Highsmith, but at the same time, I think Moon just gives them a little bit more on the 53-man roster. And I also think they'd be able to stash Peralez on the practice squad again if they want to keep him around town. So I just feel like Moon has the upper hand going into this because of that prior experience and that prior playing experience in the AFC North.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how this one goes down. I agree with you that Moon will not be as easy to stash onto the practice squad as Peralez. But I think after a year in the league, people are going to give him an opportunity. And the Steelers miss out on these guys from time to time. I don't know if they're ready to miss out on a guy that they feel is comfortable and could be a developmental piece. That's the thing, is Moon's here for a year. Cool, yeah, it works out, but he's looking for a bigger role somewhere. Peralez would be very comfortable being in Pittsburgh for as long as he could possibly be in Pittsburgh. And I think that helps sometimes. I really, truly do. But I am excited to see how that one turns out because you're right. It is maybe the closest competition that we have outside of this one, maybe. Running back 3, running back 4. Now, Cordero Patterson is easily the favorite to be the running back 3 this season. But I'm going to be honest with you guys. If he doesn't win the kick return job, which Calvin Austin said he wants to be part of the kick return this year, he's eyeing to win that job as well. If Cordero Patterson is not the starting kick returner, I'm not saying it's 100% guaranteed that he makes the 53-man roster. And I'm not saying that it's a long shot by no means. I mean, it's Cordero Patterson. He's an all-pro. This dude's been doing it forever, but he's 33 years old. He came into OTAs not ready to go. He should come into training camp ready to go, but you just never know. You got guys like Jonathan Ward, Aaron Shumklin, Dejon Edwards, and LaMichael Pirine who could come in here and make some noise. You got a couple of candidates. The Steelers could also keep 4 guys. Now, this is my prediction for how this one lays out, and I'm interested to see if you think I'm a little bit crazy with this assumption. I'm interested to see if all you guys think I'm a little bit crazy with this assumption or this prediction. I predict that Cordero does make the roster, but I also predict that the Pittsburgh Steelers find a way to keep not 1, but 2 more guys. They keep Jack Coletto, which would be their 4th. They make Cordero Patterson more of a wide receiver than an actual running back. And from there, they take or keep Dejon Edwards on their roster because they feel this guy is going to make some impact. And I think that he's got a ton of potential. People want to compare him to Jaylen Warren. I think it's way too early for that. But I do think the Steelers want to keep a fullback. I think Jack Coletto is the name to watch this season. And Dejon Edwards is the dude that they might hope turns into the next backup running back, where they look at it and just say, this guy could work next year when Najee's not around anymore. so we could keep him. Cordero Patterson could also be that guy, but at 34 years old, at some point, running backs don't have the juice anymore. I think it's easier to play wide receiver the older that you get, and Cordero might be making that transition to like a slot gadget guy where he's just all around. He's a Connor Hayward, and you keep two of those Connor Hayward type guys. It definitely knocks off the wide receivers that they keep, but at the same time, adds some boosted potential to the running back room. I'm saying Jack Coletto, Dejon Edwards, they make the roster over Jonathan Ward. LaMichael Pirine didn't look good at all during minicamp, so that one's a little bit And Aaron Shumplin, who was my guy at one point during OTAs, but I just think Edwards is going to edge him out.
Yeah, whenever you initially started mentioning Edwards, whenever they initially signed him right after the NFL draft, I think everybody looked at that and said, wow, Georgia's starting running back from last year. That's a name that immediately brings pedigree to that competition. And you mentioned P. Ryan. It was funny. I forgot P. Ryan. I was listing all the players, all the running backs, and I was like, oh yeah, Michael P. Ryan.
He's here.
He's here. He's maybe not for long, but still. No, going into training camp, Aaron
disrespect.
Sorry. Better athlete than I will ever be.
No doubt. Super Bowl champion. Super Bowl champion.
So
you're not wrong, though. You're not wrong. You're lucky I'm the one going to training camp. Thank you.
Exactly. I mean, I'm safe here behind the screen, but no, sorry, LaMichael. But still, looking at the running back situation, I feel like Dejon Edwards has the highest upside, and especially coming off of an organization like the Georgia Bulldogs, who has produced so much NFL talent. I feel like that gives him a head up on some of these other guys, even though they've been in on NFL teams before. They've been through NFL training camps before. I feel like Georgia prepares these guys in a unique way. You talked to Broderick Jones all last year, and he talked about, listen, this is nothing new for us because Kirby Smart runs Georgia like an NFL program. I think Dejon Edwards, with his pedigree, with his capabilities, what he showed in college, and the fact that he's coming out of Georgia, I like him to be on the roster at the end of training camp.
Yep, me too. I think he's a sleeper to watch. And we'll dive into sleepers before training camp actually kicks off on Thursday, but name to watch, I think, this year. And take that with a grain of salt, because last year, 2 years ago, I took what's his name out of Duke over Jaylen Warren. I'm not even going to remember his name, but this guy's it. This guy's going to be the guy. He's going to impress a lot of people. Jaylen Warren turned out to be the greatest thing the Steelers have seen in a long time. So, I'm not always right, but this one I feel pretty good about. I do feel pretty good about it. Wide receiver 2, the most talked about position for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They got a list of candidates: Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson, Van Jefferson, Quez Watkins, Marquez Callaway, Dez Fitzpatrick. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. You could say an outside guy if you want to say an outside guy. I think for me, I'll ignore the potential of a Brandon Ayuk, although Friday's coming real fast, people, or a Cortland Sutton, or a John Mechie, or people love to say DK Metcalf, those types of guys. I'll go in-house on this one. The easy favorite in my eyes is Calvin Austin. This is a guy that should win this battle, that should take a pretty significant step forward, that Russell Wilson is saying reminds him of Tyler Lockett, which is massive. He's working out with George Pickens and Deontay Johnson's route running coach. He's working out with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields during the offseason. He just seems like a guy who's taken a step forward, who's ready to contribute to this team in 2024. And I think he's going to get the opportunity to be the wide receiver 2. I think he has the most upside of anybody on the roster when it comes to that position, and the Steelers are going to try to utilize it. I think he could play the outside as well, so that's pretty big for the Steelers. And with Roman Wilson also being capable of playing both, that's a good 1-2-3 punch, with maybe a guy like Van Jefferson coming off the bench and supplying some outside help as well. But Calvin Austin is my pick. I think one of the biggest sleepers on this roster this training camp, and somebody who could take a massive step forward. Also, friend of the show, which also gives him always gives him the benefit of the doubt and a little boost in these rankings.
Yeah, I'm very bullish on Calvin Austin going into this season. I think that he only showed very slight glimpses of his top capabilities last year, but simply because he wasn't used in the proper ways. I think he'll be used in the proper ways by Arthur Smith, and I think everybody in that Steelers organization and then in that building has recognized the ceiling that Calvin Austin has, and the fact that he has not showed that really at all on Sundays. Very,
Yes.
very minimal amounts of times have you seen Calvin Austin be what he truly can be. So I'm bullish on him. I think that, to me, I would bet on him being the number 2 at the end of training camp. It feels like going into it, it's the same thing we talked about yesterday with Zach Frazier. It's the same thing we talked about yesterday with Troy Fautanu, is they're going to put a veteran in front of him and they're going to make him earn it. So I think
Yes.
that it's Van Jefferson going into camp in that pole position, but I do think by the end of camp, if I had to predict, it's going to be Calvin Austin.
Yep, I think it'll play out the exact same way. That's how it's going to go down. Is Calvin Austin will have to earn his place, but he will earn his place. The best part is, so during the Matt Canada era, you saw glimpses of practice, and it's hilarious because as people who stood on the sidelines, you said it time and time again, and maybe I'll get in trouble for saying this. Who cares? There were a lot of moments where they would run a play in practice over the last 2 years where you'd go, that was nice. They're not going to run that in the game. They're not even going to think about running that in the game. Calvin Austin would execute on a lot of those plays. A lot of plays that you would go, that was a nice play. That was well designed. Can't believe they just did that. Calvin Austin looked real good there. I know they're not going to run that in a game. So hopefully that turns into they run it into a game, and I think Calvin Austin's going to look good. Let's guess the 5 wide receivers that make the Pittsburgh Steelers roster, because this is also a pretty big question. There are a lot of candidates. We just named pretty much every single one of them. I'll give you my 5 that I expect to make the Steelers roster by the end of the season, or by the end of training camp, excuse me. That is George Pickens, obviously. And again, we will stay away from outside guys because that's a possibility. But if they don't make it, we'll predict the guys that are on the roster currently. I will go George Pickens, Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson, Scotty Miller, and Van Jefferson are my 5 to make the roster, with Cordero Patterson and Connor Hayward kind of being those 6th, 7th-ish guys for the Steelers. Allows them to keep a running back and a fullback, and then that'll rock with tight end with Pat Freiermuth and Darnell Washington. Your thoughts?
I think there's 4 guys that are likely, if not locks. There are 3 locks here. That is George Pickens, Calvin Austin, and Roman Wilson. I think you could probably pencil in Van Jefferson. You scared me for a second there because you went Scotty Miller before you said Van Jefferson. I was like, is this guy really going to leave Van Jefferson off? I'd be surprised. Never know. But those are the 4 that I think are pretty likely to end up being on the 53-man roster, if not locks. That last spot is a tough one. You've mentioned Scotty Miller on a handful of occasions. I'm keeping my eye on Dez Fitzpatrick because, similar to what you mentioned earlier about David Perales, Dez Fitzpatrick was a player that surprised everybody last summer during all the summer stuff. He came in, didn't make the roster, but stayed in Pittsburgh all year long and then came back and re-signed this year. I think going into a season where, listen, that 5th spot is definitely up for grabs, more so than it was last year and more so than it's probably been for a long time. Dez Fitzpatrick's a guy that I think coming into this season is well-liked in that room. And if he can put that work together in the next couple of weeks, there's not anybody of massive stature standing in his way. So I'm keeping my eye on Dez Fitzpatrick. And if not Dez, there's something about Quez Watkins. He wasn't that impressive this summer, but there's something about Quez Watkins. Whenever they signed him, whenever they brought him in, they made a lot of noise and they made a big deal out of signing Quez Watkins when none of us really understood why. To me, there's just something in the back of my head that says there's a reason that they like Quez Watkins that much.
There could be. There very well could be. Both of those guys will come down to the thing with Van Jefferson is he's a gunner. He could play special teams. Both of those guys are going to have to prove that they could play special teams. That's why Dez Fitzpatrick didn't stick on the roster last year, is because he couldn't play special teams. He's got to be able to do that because he's a hell of a talent on offense. That guy's a 4th-round pick. He was a stud at Louisville. And probably should have made the Titans roster, but I've heard some iffy reports on him just not being able to grasp the playbook. If he could come into Pittsburgh this summer and prove it, I agree with you. I think he's got all the talent. I think he's the biggest sleeper. Quez Watkins would be a good one. I think he carries more upside than Van Jefferson. That being said, I think the safer pick for me is still Van Jefferson. All right. Cornerback 3, which is another big one here. You got a number of candidates. Corey Trice, Darius Rush top that list, but Kalen Barnes might be on there. You could have a guy like Anthony Averett who sneaks his way onto the roster. You just never know. I'm going cornerback 3 this season. A tricky one, a sleeper, I think, over Corey Trice, and that is Darius Rush. I think Darius Rush is going to be the guy. I think he's going to really prove in training camp that he's ready to take a step forward. He's a raw corner, played wide receiver most of his career, switched and then got drafted in the 5th round, I believe, to the Indianapolis Colts, made his way to Kansas City, so on and so forth. He's in Pittsburgh. I thought he looked good during OTAs and minicamp, fell off by the end of it, but I expect him to bounce back. I think he's the guy that wins the cornerback 3 job. Corey Trice is the cornerback 4, but those two, and I think Kalen Barnes as well, fastest man in the NFL potentially. Big sleepers there. It'll be an exciting competition, especially going against these wide receivers who I think almost match their talent level, which is not good. By no means good, but if you get opportunities to prove yourself against guys like Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin and so on and so forth, you should be able to take advantage of it, and I'm excited to see them play. So I'm going Darius Rush over Corey Trice, but I think Corey Trice is a close second.
There's a lot of youth in that cornerback room, which, I mean, opens up a lot of opportunities. And the one thing that everybody needs to remember about Corey Trice is we haven't seen it full contact really at all. You need to see him be able to put together a full training camp. And that is, I mean, we're hoping that that's what we see. And Corey Trice has a lot of potential, but at the same time, you saw Darius Rush get into a couple games last year and hold his own to a certain extent. So I think that he is leader in the clubhouse. I still feel like, though, if Corey Trice can come in and he's healthy, he's 100% healthy and he's ready to go and he puts the pads on and he is getting back to what he was at his best at Purdue when he was healthy, I still feel like there's a chance that he can surpass him by the start of the season, simply because I don't think the starting point is too different for those two guys. So I'm going to go with Trice just simply because I'm betting on the upside. Again, we have not seen anything, but I'm betting on the upside with Trice, which I think is a little bit more so than what we've seen from Darius Rush.
I agree. I think there is more upside in Corey Trice. I don't believe Corey Trice is a 7th round draft pick if he doesn't deal with the injuries, but Darius Rush has a lot of potential. I mean, probably equally as much potential.
Yeah.
But Corey Trice is a natural corner, which gives him the boost. I agree. And Corey Trice is a dude that they hope turns into a long-term solution. They really, truly believe that. And they have a lot of optimism about what he can become. I'm excited to see him get a training camp. I hope he stays healthy. He should be back to full contact by Thursday, which is huge because we finally get to see him do some team stuff. And we'll get a good indication. I would expect a slow ramp up. So it's Corey Trice hasn't played real football in a year. Yeah. Okay. And then by the end of training camp, he's like, oh, okay, look at now he's back. So we'll see what happens. But I agree. That's a big one. And I think either one of those guys are very exciting. So it's a good time for the Steelers. All right. Slot corner, which is another massive one if you are the Pittsburgh Steelers, because Cam Sutton will be out 8 games with a suspension. Beanie Bishop, Anthony Averett, Deshaun Elliott, DeMonte KZ, Josiah Scott, all kind of sleepers there. Nate Metters maybe on the docket as well. I'm going Josiah Scott. I don't feel good about any of these guys, but I'm going Josiah Scott. I think he's got a little bit of potential. He's still young enough to grow. He's played in Philadelphia on a Super Bowl caliber team. He's got some experience on special teams. If you need him to fill in for 8 games, great. But if we're going to be realistic, I think he's the guy who wins the job, and then Deshaun Elliott or DeMonte KZ find themselves playing that role a lot more than anybody else. But if we're just going strictly corners, I'm going Josiah Scott. Don't feel good about any of these, but I'm going Josiah Scott.
Yeah, you mentioned that KZ and Elliott could both be options, but at the same time, when the Steelers built this team, they built those two guys to play their initial positions, right?
Yep.
And you have to make adjustments because, the Cam Sutton thing happened and Beanie Bishop wasn't as ready as they were hoping he would be when they brought him in as a UDFA, and Anthony Averett really hasn't done what they had hoped that he would do. But at the same time, this defense is at its best when Deshaun Elliott can go back and play safety and be that kind of what Minka was the last couple of seasons, which is the guy that's going to come up and play the ball a little bit more, allowing Minka to play more center field. So you're hoping you don't have to tap on, Deshaun Elliott's shoulder and say, well, listen, we need you there. So you're hoping that one of these other guys steps up. I would love for it to be Beanie Bishop, but again, you need to see it. So I have a hard time, disagreeing with you on Josiah Scott, just simply because of the options. He's the one that has showed a pulse, to this point, based on, the first couple of weeks of OTAs and minicamp.
Yeah, it's Beanie Bishop would be the dude. It'd be electric. It'd be awesome. You just didn't see it during OTAs and minicamp, so it's hard to take a guess that it's going to happen during training camp. I would be a, a, over the moon if Beanie Bishop made this roster and was able to contribute in 2024, but I just don't see it happening. Not as of right now, at least. Josiah Scott's the safe bet, boring bet. They want to keep the safeties back there, like you said. Minka can't play Minka ball if you got to move pieces around, so let him play Minka ball. Worry about the slot corner. Hopefully, look at they're going to sign somebody. We're going to be honest, they're going to sign somebody, but Josiah Scott's our pick. Offensive tackle is a massive conversation for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Dan Moore, Broderick Jones, and Troy Fautanu. I mean, I've given my answers first. I'll toss this one to you, and then I'll give you mine. Mm-hmm. Your starting left and right tackle in week 1 for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I don't like it, but starting left tackle Dan Moore, starting right tackle Broderick Jones. I again, similar to Beanie Bishop, I want to see Troy Fautanu starting in week 1. But at the same time, not only because the reports have been, he's a work in progress through his first OTAs, but it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. They are notoriously slow builders with their rookies in year number 1. The only one that I can think of that is not that is Chase Claypool a couple years ago, and we saw how that ended up fizzling out. But you look at what they've done the last couple of years, specifically last year, because that is what they've done with specifically Omar Khan's picks. They take their time. Joey, everybody said Joey was much better than Levi Wallace, and he still didn't start until week 4, week 5, something like that. Same thing with Broderick Jones. Was he a better right tackle than what Chooks was last year? Yes, but he was a rookie. So in my opinion, it's going to be the same way. Even if Troy Fautanu takes those strides and gets to the point where everybody's saying he's ready, the Steelers might still hold him back early in that season, especially because the schedule is supposedly easier.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I think it's going to be Dan Moore at left, Broderick at right. That being said, I hope we are less than I hope you. So Nick goes to a concert on Thursday. He comes back on Monday. I'm hoping Monday when we sit down and talk, I'm already sitting here saying, yep, Troy Fautanu is going to be a starter in week 1. I hope that's the case. Where we sit here right now, it's hard to predict against that. I'm going Dan Moore on the left, Broderick on the right. It's not ideal. If the Steelers can get a trade for Dan Moore, they'll probably take it. And when it comes to a swing tackle from there, Dylan Cook or Spencer Anderson's your guy, but they feel good about Dylan Cook. So I could see them going Broderick, Troy, and Dylan Cook. It's definitely a downgrade, but they've worked with less. I'm going Dan Moore, though. It stinks to say that, but I'm going Dan Moore. And then the big one, the big kahuna here. Kahuna? Am I saying that
Kahuna?
Right? Kahuna. I'm not good with names or words.
Kahuna is something else, but
yeah, I'm just not good with things, man. I'm not good with words. Russell Wilson versus Justin Fields, quarterback 1 of the Pittsburgh Steelers. The biggest headline that is going to come out of Pittsburgh all summer long. I've already been informed. Look, a couple of years ago, I had to do the every pass. Mason, Mitch, Kenny Pickett, every time they threw a ball, I had to mark it down. Complete, incomplete, what happened, blah, blah, blah. I was asked to do that this summer, which means that you know that this is going to be massive. And if you think I'm crazy for doing that, almost every beat writer ever has always done that for a quarterback competition, just so that you know, just so that you have a little bit of a progress report to share with everybody. Crazy times. Quarterback 1, Russell Wilson versus Justin Fields. We have said this a number of times. This is not a real quarterback competition. This is a fake quarterback competition that is going to give Russell Wilson the job, but it gives Justin Fields an opportunity to showcase himself to the Pittsburgh Steelers and to everybody else on, hey, whether or not he's good to go. Russ is going to win it. Russ is going to walk out of here week 1. There's going to be no moment where that momentum shift happens and the Steelers start to give team 1 reps, a majority of the team 1 reps to Justin Fields. This will be Russell Wilson's job. At least they were clear this time by saying Russ is in pole position instead of trying to lie to us and saying this is an open competition. Mitch, Kenny, and Mason will all get an opportunity. No, it's Russ is the guy. I think Russ walks into here week 1 starter. I don't see him losing the job in training camp, and I don't see Justin Fields being enough to overtake the job in training camp. I'm going Russ. Justin Fields, I still have a lot of potential and upside for, but Russ is the guy. Your thoughts? Do you feel any differently?
No, this was the plan all along. And I don't know where the plan might have shifted in some people's eyes, but to me, it has not changed one bit since, St. Patrick's Day when Justin Fields was brought over. It was, oh, okay, so this is the plan. It's Russell Wilson's team. Justin Fields is going to sit behind him, and that's going to be the story. And then, as it happens, we get further and further away from actual football and watching people on the field, and people start thinking, well, Justin Fields was a starter. Well, Justin Fields was really good at Ohio State. Well, Mike Tomlin, okay, it's not happening. Russell Wilson is the starter going into week 1. You can readjust expectations after you see Wilson start 4 or 5 games, but it has to be drastic either way.
Yep, I agree. It has to be, Russ has to lose the job, and it's got to be very convincing that he should not be the starting quarterback. And I just don't think that's going to happen. You'll have the argument of Russ needs wide receivers before you have the argument of Russ is a bad quarterback, which makes sense because Russ has really bad wide receivers right now, and he needs to do more with them. But I think Russ is going to be fine. People ask, hey, what are your expectations for Russ? I think Russ is going to be a good quarterback this year. He 26-4, 26-8, whatever last season. I think he's closer to 30 this year. I don't think he hits 10 interceptions, and I think he leads the Steelers to a winning record. I look at Russ as a guy who he is the key piece in a puzzle that is pretty complete. The Steelers have done a lot to put themselves in position to make a run this year. They're not going to mess it up with a real quarterback competition. Russ is the dude. You develop the chemistry early, and you get it going. Justin's going to get some reps because he's got to get some flow with George and Calvin and Roman and Pat and those guys, but it'll be Russ 90% of the time, and it'll be Russ's job by the end of the year or by the start of the year. That's our big ones. That's our training camp battles. Appreciate you guys sticking around for those. There's some exciting ones, and I'm excited to talk about them as we get into training camp and continue to flow and see what happens. We got a lot of questions, and as we do every day, we'll answer all these before we head out of here. If you have more, drop them in the chat. What do we got?
Let's start with Vibin' with the Dogs, who says Cam Hayward makes 98 on the top 100 list, but Aaron Rodgers makes 92 while playing 4 snaps. What gives?
Yeah, so Cam didn't play much more than 4, so you gotta be realistic to there. He dealt with an injury as well. He didn't play super well last season. I think 98's a good spot for him. He has an opportunity to really climb, but it's about who is the best guy in the NFL going into this season, I believe. So I would put Aaron Rodgers ahead of Cam. I think 92 is very low for Aaron Rodgers. Cam didn't play well last year. Dealt with an injury. Really didn't have a good stat line. Was much slower than typical. So I'm not super upset about that one, to be honest.
Let's move over to Joe Dilly's question, who says, good morning, Noah and Nick. Was wondering if you guys think production on offensive third down will go up and possibly third down defense will get off the field better, and why? Where do you think that help comes from?
So if we're going third down, production on offense on third down, yeah, I do think it gets better simply because Arthur Smith should set yourself up for better third and short situations. I mean, it was wild to me watching the Pittsburgh Steelers find themselves in 3rd and 10 and 3rd and 12 seemingly every single down last year pretty consistently. So this year I expect them to be in more prime situations to where you could find yourself in 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3 and get first down. So I expect that to be better. On the defensive side of the ball, yeah, I think it simply comes down to the Pittsburgh Steelers are not going to be as exhausted on defense, and we are going to see how much that benefits a defense. If you are not going out there on every third, like that's the thing. When for the last 3 years, it has been mind-blowing when the Steelers get a first down. When they get to the other side of the 50, it's even crazier. You're going, what is this? Are the Steelers maybe going to score this drive? What is happening? The expectation every time they were on offense was this is going to be a 3rd and out. That changes. I think massive changes come with that. That's why I think it's going to be better.
Let's move over to Anthony's question, who says, who do you think will be the biggest surprise at training camp and the biggest potential letdown?
The biggest potential letdown will be Justin Fields. That will be the biggest potential letdown is Justin Fields just not putting on a good show and not really being in the competition for the quarterback one. When it comes to the biggest surprise of training camp, I think Nick Herbig is going to be a massive surprise. I think Peyton Wilson's going to be a massive surprise. I think Deshaun Elliott's going to be a massive surprise. And I think Dante Jackson's going to be a massive surprise. Those would be my list. On the offensive side of the ball, it is most definitely going to be Calvin Austin, but we'll wait and see that. But I would go those defenders as the guys that I think are going to really turn some heads, become a bit of a household name during training camp.
Let's go over to Cecil's question. He wants to know, am I the only one that thinks the Bengals get overrated? True, they have Burrow and have done well against the Chiefs, but they haven't been all that against their own division.
Yeah, I don't think the Bengals are overrated. I do think the Steelers do well against the Bengals, but I think Joe Burrow is the second best quarterback in football, and that does a lot for a team. So if he's healthy, the Bengals are a contender at all times. And, you got Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. It helps. You need a better offensive line, and I don't know what you're doing with Zach Moss at running back, but, so be it. I don't think the Bengals are overrated. I do think at times if Joe Burrow is not 100% healthy, they're not really much of a threat. But if he's healthy, they are a serious threat no matter what. Before we continue, we do have a word from our boys over at BetterHelp. Totally forgot to play this ad, so we're going to play it now. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Have you ever found yourself scrolling on social media, maybe spending too much time on whatever platform you're addicted to and thinking, man, why am I feeling down? Why do I find myself not finding the joy that social media is supposed to give me? That's because comparison is the thief of joy, and it's easy to envy other people's lives. But therapy can help. It can help you focus on what you want instead of what other people have, so you can start living your best life. I'm somebody who's advocated for therapy for a long time. You constantly see me wearing the sweatshirt, going to therapy is cool. I've reaped the benefits for years, and I think everybody who's thinking about it should add that to their agenda as well, because in one way or another, it's very helpful. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/allsteelers today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/allsteelers. Appreciate our boys over at BetterHelp. All right, let's keep it going. What do we got?
Let's continue with Vibing with the Dogs, who says, who's going to be the fan favorite at training camp? My personal favorite would be Cameron Johnston because he looks like Bill Burr.
Cameron Johnston will be a fan favorite. Christian Kuntz, if he gets in front of a camera one time, will be a fan favorite, especially on Hard Knocks. Fan favorite at training camp will be George Pickens. It will be Peyton Wilson. It will be Joey Porter. It will be Minkah Fitzpatrick. It will be those guys. It will be the guys turning heads, making plays. Calvin Austin will also become a fan favorite by the end of it. But it's the big guys. It's the guys making massive plays. It's George Pickens with crazy catches. That's who steals the hearts of fans during training camp, and that's who will steal the hearts this year.
Cecil wants to know, do you think TJ uses the disrespect as motivation or just ignores the ignorance?
No, TJ Watt left the NFL honors ceremony this offseason because he knew he wasn't winning it. And he was pissed. So yes, he uses it as motivation 100%. I don't think he cares about PFF so much. I'm telling you, players look at PFF as the biggest joke of all. Like, there are comments in here right now, people being like, more talking heads, blah, blah, blah. That's every player when it comes to PFF. They do not care. So he does use it as motivation, not PFF though.
KDTV says, what happens Friday? You mentioned that when we were talking about wide receivers.
Friday is my first deadline of when a Brandon Ayuk trade can happen. Is it going to? I'm skeptical, but I said I marked that as like the first moment of the timeline where it could go down, and then it's the middle to end of August.
Let's go over to Nicholas's question, who says, good morning. How much of an upgrade do you think Cameron Johnston is going to be over Presley Harvin the past couple of years, and will he be a difference maker for the Steelers in 2024?
Yeah, Cameron Johnston's going to be a stud. People are going to love Cameron Johnston. He is immediately better, and I love Presley Harvin as a person and as an athlete. I think Presley's got a lot of potential. He's just got to work on some stuff. But Cameron Johnston is consistent, and that is the biggest thing. Is it is no more guesswork. It's the same thing as the offense. You're not going into it thinking, this is going to be bad. You're going into it just thinking, this is a punt. Nice. This is a punt. It's going to be better. Major upgrade.
Pittsburgh Heather says, I don't get the Calvin Austin hype. He dressed for 11 games, had receptions in 8 of them, and had a total of 17 receptions for 180 yards in 2023. Are you saying it was 100% on play calling last year?
Yes. Yes, I 100% am saying it's. Look at the Pittsburgh Steelers in the Mike Tomlin era, and even before that, it's been a historically long time since they fired a coach mid-season. And most times they don't even fire coaches. They just let their contracts expire. They fired Matt Canada in the middle of the season last year because of how bad he was. That shows you how bad the play calling was. It is 100% on the play calling. Calvin Austin was not utilized. They loved Allen Robinson's pass blocking. Miles Boykin made some plays on the offense. Gunnar Olszewski was used out there more than Calvin Austin. It was ridiculous the way that they went about that offense. Yes, 100% on the play calling.
Vibing with the Dog says, where does Michael Pruitt fit with this team?
I hope Michael Pruitt is a piece to this team. He seems like a good dude. He's a hard-nosed worker. That being said, the Steelers have a big blocking tight end. His name's Darnell Washington, and I think he'll prove to be enough. So I don't see Pruitt being a guy that makes the team, but he's a good veteran presence. And if the Steelers find themselves needing a tight end, if Darnell Washington's knees or something are acting up, Pruitt is a guy to watch, certainly.
Lifted Ones has a question here saying, how long does training camp last?
It goes until August 20th, I believe, just about August 20th. It's 20-ish days straight or something. It's 25-ish days or something. It's crazy. It goes until about the last week of August, second last week of August.
Let's go over to Ishmael, who says, do you think we sweep the Ravens again this season?
I hope so. I hope so. It would be a good time. I think it's a possibility. The Ravens look good. My biggest thing is, can you stop Derrick Henry? But the Steelers have been historically good at stopping Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. That's a good sign right there. So I would say I hope so. Maybe a bit too early to predict that, though.
Cecil has a question because I brought his name up. What team is Claypool even with now? He has done nothing since he left the Steelers.
He is with the Buffalo Bills. He'll show up for the joint practice, which will be cool to see. He hasn't done much. He hasn't gotten much of an opportunity. He was in Chicago, was hurt for a little bit, didn't really work out there. I mean, you could say what you want, but it didn't really work out there. Went to Miami. There was no place for him in Miami. Now he's in Buffalo with an opportunity to prove himself. So I am always pro player. I wish him nothing but the best. We'll see what happens.
Lifted One says, would you guys have rather kept Mason over getting Russell Wilson this offseason?
No. No. Look, Mason's a good quarterback, and I think Mason, like, it's crazy. You really have to sometimes tell yourself and explain to yourself, like, the Steelers' offense was the most incompetent offense in football maybe has ever seen in the last 20 years, the last 2 seasons. Mason comes in for 4 games without an offensive coordinator, and in 4 games, that offense looks capable. Crazy. That's on Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph's a good quarterback. I still think I'm going Russell Wilson.
Alexander says, Steelers receive Brandon Ayuk, 49ers receive a 2025-2026 second rounder, James Daniels, and Calvin Austin. Yes or no?
No. Shuts down your Super Bowl hopes this year because he got rid of James Daniels, gives up 2 second-round picks, which is too much for me, and you're getting rid of Calvin Austin, which I think is the easiest move here, but I still am going to say no. I like it. If James Daniels wasn't in there, I think I'd be more into it, and I'm pro Calvin Austin, but I think that you could replace Calvin Austin and be a better Super Bowl contender. I don't think you could replace James Daniels and be as strong of a Super Bowl contender.
Mike Naples says, how do you envision this team evolving over the next few weeks?
I mean, I think the offense, we get to see a glimpse of how good they can be. I think fans will get a good look at the wide receivers and Russell Wilson and where they stand, and I think Pat Freiermuth is going to take a step forward. I think offensively, we're going to see a lot of growth. Defensively, he's already looking good. I don't expect that to change. Offensively, we're going to see a lot of growth.
Jim D says, so do you think San Francisco re-signs Ayuk now that Ricky Pearsall hurt himself at home and is probably out? Do you think the Pearsall injury changes anything?
I think the Pearsall injury makes it more urgent, but I don't think San Francisco, like all the reports say, San Francisco doesn't want to trade him, but they don't want to sign him, which is wild to me. They think they're going to scoot their way into playing this year on his last year of his 5th-year option and playing next year on his franchise tag. That's not going to happen. He's going to hold out. So I expect Ayuk to not be signed. I do think the Pearsall thing kind of adds some urgency to it, though. Yes.
Dalton wants to know, what's your educated guess on where TJ and Minka are going to finish in the NFL's top 100? Do you think Highsmith, Daniels, and Siamalu will be snubbed?
This is a tough one. I think Highsmith, Daniels, and Siamalu do get snubbed. I think all 3 of them do. TJ and Minka, I would say TJ's top 20 I don't think he's top 10 this year, even though he should be, but I'm going to say top 20. Minka was hurt last year. You got to remember that, but I'm still going to go top 50. I think Minka will go like 45 to 48, and TJ is somewhere from, 10 to 20, somewhere in that range.
MPCP says, what do you predict our offensive averages are in points, passing yards, rushing yards per game this season? Let's stick with points for today, since it's only July 23rd.
Yeah, I think it's too early to know the passing and the rushing yards per game. We got to see what this offense is going to look like first and how they're going to work. I would go the Steelers are going to score more than 21 points a game this season. Scoring's down in the NFL, but I would say 24 points a game is a good mark to sit at. TJ Watt's rule of thumb, if you could score more than 20 points a game, you should win it. So 24 points is my guess.
Let's go over to KDTV, who says, what does the Steelers need to do to evolve and to beat teams like the Chiefs on Christmas, or really in the playoffs?
They need to get an offense going. That's plain and simple. They need to get an offense going, and they have the pieces in place to get an offense going, but it doesn't matter how good your defense is. Patrick Mahomes is going to find ways to score, so you have to be able to match those scores. They have the pieces. They have those guys. They have Russell Wilson, which I think is a massive upgrade and helps a lot, and they have Arthur Smith, which is the biggest piece to this entire thing. So I do think they evolve. They need to evolve in scoring points and having a better offense, and they have the pieces here to do so. So that's my answer to that one.
Nathan wants to know, what about somehow gaining Russell Gage as a number 2 with George Pickens? Gage is relatively cheap for his talent.
Yeah, I like Russell Gage. I don't know where Russell Gage is, to be honest with you right now. Last I knew, I don't know where he is right now. Could be an option. I don't know what his contract looks like. I don't know what anything looks like. People talked about Alan Lazard the other day. I think that's a terrible option, but maybe. Russell Gage is better. I don't know about a true number 2, though. That's the thing, is you have a bunch of options that are maybe just below Russell Gage, and Calvin Austin might have the same potential as Russell Gage. So I don't see there's much difference there.
I believe he is currently a free agent. So
if he still hasn't signed, I don't know if I'm feeling that, to be honest. There's got to be reasons there.
Let's go over to GC, who says, what do you think our cornerback depth order looks like by the end of the 2024 season?
Joey Porter Jr., Dante Jackson, Corey Trice, Darius Rush, import, free agent signing here, which probably means Patrick Peterson. And then on the inside, it's Cam Sutton, import, free agent signing here. That's what I would guess.
Let's go to Luke's question. Only a couple more left here. He says, when Russ won his Super Bowl, all he had was Baldwin and Harvin at wide receiver, right? Are we underestimating the impact of the running game and the defense? I personally feel like we are fine and can win with the roster they have.
Luke, why are you downplaying the impact of Doug Baldwin and Percy Harvin? Excuse me. Those two were studs, absolute studs. Doug Baldwin was phenomenal. He was the Tyler Lockett before Tyler. I think you're underplaying Doug Baldwin and Percy Harvin here. In my opinion, those are two fantastic wide receivers. I think the Steelers need to add somebody. I think they have potential. I'm not saying that this team is going nowhere if they don't make a move. By no means do I feel that way. But I don't think that George Pickens and company add up to Doug Baldwin and Percy Harvin. And on top of that, Golden Tate was on that roster as well. So let's just, let's put some respect on some really good wide receivers here.
Let's go to GC's question, who says, do you think Mark Robinson keeps a spot on the Steelers roster this year?
As of right now, yes. If Cole Holcomb comes back, I'm going to say no. If Cole Holcomb's back by week 1, which I don't expect him to be, then Mark Robb is most likely on his way out. If Cole Holcomb isn't back, which that's how I view this right now, is he's not going to be ready by week 1, then Mark Robinson does keep his spot, yes. But Tyler Matakevich is too good on special teams to just push to the side. Mark Robinson doesn't have the upside to keep him over somebody who's proven.
We have a couple people here, and we'll close that out with a couple of these. Chase wants to know about Justin Simmons, saying, I know he wants to be a starter, but with the uncertainty in the secondary, why not try to play Elliott in the slot and sign Justin Simmons? KTH Clips also asked about Justin Simmons, saying, why haven't they picked up one of the top free agents like Simmons?
So I think that makes sense. Right now, it makes sense for the first eight games of the season, and I could see where everybody's going with that. But at the same time, the Steelers are thinking the last 8 games of the season, and where do you go from there? They want Deshaun Elliott to be that guy On top of that, from what I'm hearing, Justin Simmons is looking for like $10 to $12 million this season, which is a lot of money. It's almost everything that the Steelers have. They're not going to do that. You could go get a Patrick Peterson for $2-3 million, Stephon Gilmore for like $5 million. It just makes too much sense to go a different route. Justin Simmons obviously is the best of the group, but he's also much more expensive, and you could find you could find a replacement and a downgrade, but a replacement for a lot cheaper.
That's a wrap for today.
Awesome. With that said, guys, we are heading out of here and we are off to Latrobe, Pennsylvania tomorrow. We will provide some updates on the schedule moving forward. So with training camp being in the morning this year, we will not be doing morning podcasts. I know, super big bummer, but we are going to go live. We have to continue to go live for you guys because we are not going to miss out on your questions. It is a key part to the show, and we love talking to you guys every single day. So we will go afternoon. That time is to be decided. It will rely heavily on what the workflow looks like and what the day of practice looks like for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It will still be Monday through Friday. Tomorrow's will probably be right about 5 o'clock. Mike Tomlin talks at 4. We will jump on and go live and discuss everything that has happened on opening day and much more tomorrow at about 5 p.m. Every other stream, I'm guessing, is somewhere between 3 and 4 in the afternoon. Hopefully get you guys through the end of the workday, depending on what we're looking for. But that will be how we go about things throughout training camp. And then during the season, we'll go back to our regularly scheduled programs. I hope that doesn't screw up everybody. And if it does, please let us know. And if it is too big of a hassle, we will make things work to make sure that our fans and everybody watching is capable of watching the show. With that said, we're heading out of here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. And as we say every single day, please go find all of our work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. The next time you see us, I will be sitting somewhere in St. Vincent College, and I couldn't tell you how excited I am to do so. With that said, enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.